So welcome everybody. This is part 2, Crash Course Build from the Ground Up, part 2. If you were here the last hour, we're going to be carrying on. We're going to be focusing specifically on workflows. A couple of things, y'all should be on mute during the session. If you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat box or unmute. I'll be responding to them throughout the webinar. I try really hard to monitor the chat window at the same time, especially so we can just kind of stay on topic as we move forward. All of these presentations are being recorded and you'll get access to the presentations after Kuali Days through the Socio app. I should introduce myself. I'm Shannon Rosaire. I am the Customer Success Manager for the Build team at Kuali. So I know a lot of you are probably sick of me actually, but hopefully not. Hopefully this will be a great session for you as well. If you are just joining us, I'm going to go ahead and put the instructions in there one more time for you to get access to a sandbox. So feel free to fill out that information and get access to the sandbox. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off on the last session. So if you were not here with us, I'm just going to give you kind of a quick 30-second overview. You're going to miss some features as we go through this, but I think you'll be able to kind of pick up right where we are. For those of you that were here in the last session, you get a quick review and it'll probably be good for you anyways. So first of all, we're going to be creating an app. We started this app new major. So let's say a student wants to request a new major. And I should do just, again, a little vocab check here. An app in Build or an application is a form and a workflow combined, and also the data that comes in from that form and workflow. So who's submitted what form, who's approved or rejected forms, so on and so forth. I introduced you to the Build homepage. Just a quick plug for our What's New area. Make sure you check that regularly so you can see what awesome features are being released. At the Build, the Kuali Build menu, top left, just a reminder about the Help menu. This will take you to our guides so you can learn all of the how-tos of Build. I try to keep these as up-to-date as possible, so reference these often. You can search, and search usually works pretty good in Zendesk. Integrations can be set up. TAD session later this week on smart gadgets and integrations. And then also we have a GraphQL session tomorrow to learn more about GraphQL integrations. I recommend those. They'll be talking a little bit more about them than I will today. All right, I want to review the groups area one more time. This is good. It's going to come back to us as we get into workflow here in just a minute. So groups, you'll remember in the groups area, we have what are called categories. Categories are a way to describe what type of groups are in that category. So it categorizes a bunch of groups, if you will. So you'll notice that we've created for you this colleges category. The category is a bunch of colleges or groups of colleges. So you can see we have the College of Business or the School of Business, School of Education, School of Engineering, and so forth. In my departments, which is a child category of colleges, but in my departments category, I have a bunch of department groups. Art, biology, chemical engineering, and so forth are groups in that particular category. Now, at the category level, so in my departments category, if I click View Category at the top right, you'll see that I can create various roles. Those roles will trickle down to the groups within that category where I can then assign specific individuals to those roles. So if I jump back to my category, and let's say I jump into my biology group or my biology department, you can see that those roles are here on my biology category, and I can assign specific individuals to those roles. So like department chair is Leila Mueller, executive committee consists of these individuals. Now, a role does not have to be a one-to-one relationship, though it can, like with department chair. A role could also mean several people. So Erin has an executive committee role, Peyton has an executive committee role, so on and so forth. So when we get into workflow here in a second, you can select whether you want, one person in one role to approve something, or a group of people to approve something. And I'll show you some of the options that are available with that. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking roles and categories and groups and things like that, okay? I'm gonna jump back into the app that we started last session. So it's our new major form. And notice how when I come back into the app the second time, it takes me to the Documents tab. The Documents tab will show me submitted forms. The document is a submitted form in Build, and that's what we're going to see here, but we haven't submitted anything, so that's why there's no records. The form. I want to point out a couple of things that we did last hour because they're going to come back to us in the workflow. We created a current department field that tied specifically into that department's category I was showing you. And we also created a new department field, again, tying into that specific department's category that we used before. That's going to come up later. You'll also remember that we had a couple of, we had a field specifically asking how many times have you requested a new major? First time, 2, 3, 4 or more. And we even did some conditional visibility. So if the user selects 4 or more, and then in their form, this Y box will appear. It will be hidden for every other answer, but if they select 4 or more, then that Y box will appear. Now, before we jump into workflow, there's one other field I want to add in that I forgot to do last hour. And that is, I want to pull in this, I want to allow this user to select their advisor from a list of users that are in the system. And you saw, I didn't really point it out last time, but you saw that there's the users area of the system that shows you all of the users that are in Build. So because I want the user to select from a drop-down list, I'm going to do this data lookup list. And I'm going to pull it in kind of towards the top of my form up here. There we go. And I'm going to say advisor. I'll choose my source, and we're going to use the users area of Build. So I'm going to choose the Kuali data area. Users, notice nothing is required for them to get that information. So I'll push continue there. And then again, we can test right in the form. They'll give me a drop down of users. So that way the user can say, oh, my advisor is Dawn, for example, and then Dawn will appear. Okay. Now that we've kind of recapped everything, let's jump into workflow. When you get into workflow, you'll notice over at the left that we have 5 different steps, and I'll review most of those, some of them in more detail than others. Like in the form area, you'll simply click on a step type and drag and drop it into your form. I'm going to choose approval first, and you'll notice that form submission happens, and then we're going to go right into this approval. Now, before I jump into how to build an approval, I just want to do a quick description on what each of these steps are. Approval is what you think it is, like someone can approve or reject a form or send it back. An acknowledge step is, I kind of think of this as a courtesy step, basically. Like you want someone to be aware that this form has been submitted, but you are not dependent on their acknowledgement or their approval of the form. So for example, let's say I want the dean to just know that this form has been submitted. I can send an acknowledge step or an acknowledgement to the dean, and they can acknowledge it, or they don't even have to do anything, and it will not affect our workflow from moving forward. So like I said, kind of a courtesy step. Notifications. The notification step is, well, let me back up. In Build, in the workflow, we don't send a lot of automatic notifications. We send a notification to someone that's an approver or an acknowledger or a reviewer, I should say. When it's their turn, when it's on their step, we'll send an email letting them know, hey, you've got an approval that you have to do, or hey, you have an acknowledgement that you have to do. Those are the only automatic notifications that are sent out. Any other type of notification that you want to send out would be done through a notification step. So for example, if you want to let the form submitter know their form's been approved, you'd use the notification step to inform them. Branch allows you to have different workflows set up based on how certain responses come in the form. So how a submitter responds to certain answers, you may branch differently. And then an integration, it's pretty basic integration. We allow you to push data to an API endpoint. Leanne, so if an acknowledgement does not require action, does not affect the workflow, how is it different from a notification? It doesn't have to be. An acknowledgement, they can actually come in and say, I acknowledge I've seen the form. So they can push a button that says, hey, I've seen the form. You would have that in your data saying, okay, the dean has seen the form or they haven't seen the form. A notification would simply just say, hey, Dean, this form exists. This has happened. It doesn't give them a link into the form or anything. It just says, hey, this form is here. The acknowledgement actually allows them to go into the form and, like I said, click a button saying, yes, I've seen this form. Now, there's other ways to give the dean, for example, an access to the form and view those documents, which I'll show you a little bit later today. But that's kind of the difference there, Leanne. Okay, so let's jump in. So you'll notice I dragged and dropped this approval here. Now, let's say on this first approval, I want the advisor to approve. So I want the advisor to approve this particular form. The next step is to select how we're going to know what person that is. And this is where the users and groups area Build really come into play. And this is what I think makes Build powerful. So who's going to approve this step? Person in a role of a group or the group's hierarchy on the form. So I'm going to come back to this. Well, actually, no, I'll describe it now, and then I'll show you how to use it here in just a second. Person in a role of a group on the form. You'll remember on the form, we had added a field for, say, new department. That is a group. So that's the Kuali groups area, new department. And let's say I want the department chair to approve the form. So what this is saying here is it's saying, okay, which group? Well, whatever group the user puts in that new department field. So I'm going to select new department and then which role. And from here, I'm going to say department chair. So this says, okay, if the user selects chemistry as their new department, the chemistry department chair will automatically be selected to approve that form. If it's dance, if they put dance in the new department field, Build is automatically going to recognize the dance department chair and have the dance department chair approve at this step. Okay, so this is based on a group on the form. The second option works similarly. This is any group, not necessarily on the form. So for example, like I didn't have an HR group on the form, but let's say I need someone in payroll to approve a form. I could say, hey, I'm going to have this person in payroll approve this form every time, but I don't have to have that group on the form. What if a role does not exist for one group and you choose the first option? That's a really good question because that has happened. And what it will do is it actually, John, will throw an error in the form. So let's say I think it's my anthropology group. I don't have someone in that role. And let's say a student selects anthropology and I don't have a department chair selected in anthropology. Then it's going to throw an error on my form. It's going to say, hey, your form is broken. In that case, what I would do is I would actually create a branch step that says, okay, the rule is if they select XYZ, then they're going to go to this different workflow because there's going to be a different process. That's one option. Another option, rather than putting in department chair, because let's say the anthropology department doesn't have a department chair, which in my case they don't, I could create a whole new role in the categories area that says new major first approval. And I can put whoever is going to be in that new major first approval in that particular role. So those are some workarounds that I can think of. John, does that answer your question? Okay, thanks. Michael, what if the person in that role changes? If there are documents in flight, will they pick up the change? Yes. So that's that. I'm glad you brought that up because then a little bit farther down says you can put any specific person. So let's say I just want Shannon to approve this form every time. Totally fine and doable, but we know, as I'm sure you're inferring here, Michael, well, what if that role changes? What if that person changes? We recommend selecting a role and changing that person's role in the groups area for the very reason that you state. When that person leaves or goes to a different department and gets promoted, and you change that user's assignment in the groups area, it won't affect negatively their documents in flight, meaning their documents aren't going to be dead in the water. It's going to pick up the new person in that role. I was so poorly explained, but I hope you get what I'm saying there. The person that's the new assignee to that role will take over for any of the documents in flight, the workflows in flight. So we recommend not using this option of any specific person because if you did it here on every form, you'd have to remember to go change Shannon's name on 5 different forms that she's approving. rather than just changing her once in the role. So I kind of answered another question in there as well. So Michael, did that, hopefully that mess of an answer give you a good response? Okay, perfect. So there's any specific person. I can also select a person specified on the form to approve this role. In our case, that's what I want to do. We want the advisor to approve this. So I'm going to select advisor here. And oh, yeah, I already talked about the step label. Advisor approval. One thing I forgot to mention here on the step label. Notice over here on the left where it says approval. If you don't have a step label, it's just going to say approval. We recommend having the step label because it will tell you which step you're on, and it's a little easier to troubleshoot that way, okay? I'm going to skip the denial section for right now. I'll come back to it. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Notice how my approval is now listed as advisor approval. So again, you want to have that step label. If the person changes after a form has been submitted, what would happen? So Terry, if a person has changed, if someone in that role has been swapped out, then and their step has not happened yet, like that, their approval step that they're assigned to has not happened, then the new person will be recognized on that approval. If their step has already happened, however, it does not go back to the previous step. So it's just for all the steps moving forward, it will recognize the new assignee. So does that make sense, Terry? Okay, perfect. All right, so we've got this advisor approval. You'll notice if it's denied, nothing's going to happen. We're going to stop. I'll come back to the denial. Okay, let's say the advisor approves it. I want my form submitter to be notified that their form has been approved. So I'm going to pull in a notification here, and I am going to customize my notification. And I'm going to say submitter approval notification. Boy, that stuff that I've already filled out really helps me here. I don't have to type again and mess up my spelling. So I'm going to call this submitter approval notification. Who's going to receive this notification? Now, same options that we saw in the approval. There's one additional option here, which is an email specified on the form. I could ask a submitter to fill out an email here. Don't have to, but that is another option. I can send it to an email that they've filled out. In my case, I'm going to do a person specified on the form, and I'm going to say the submitter here. Okay. From here, I can give my email a subject. So I can say, your request is approved. And then in my email body, your request is approved. Thanks, registrar. Okay. Very basic, very simple. If I want to customize it, make it a little bit more personal, that's where these variables come in. So for example, let's say I want to use the user's name here. I can add a variable which will pull in information from the form. So I can say the student name, for example. So it's going to say, hey, student name, your request is approved. Let's say I want to make it even more personal. Your request to change to the blank department. So let's say I want to say to the new department. We'll select new department. So if they choose, for example, biology, your request to change to the biology department is approved. Thanks, registrar. Okay, so it'll just fill it in with kind of just some of that more personal data. Likewise, I can add variables in the email subject. This is a new feature. So if you're one of my customers and haven't seen this yet, this is new. It's come out in the last couple of weeks. I can add the same thing here. So variable, let's see. New department here. So your new department is approved or whatnot. Okay, so those are just some variables. I'm going to go ahead and save that. So let's go through my workflow. Form is submitted, automatically goes to the advisor that the user selects in the form. The advisor approves it, and immediately a notification is sent to the submitter saying your request is approved. Okay, pretty basic. Workflow is done. Hooray, we're all happy. Now let's go back to the denial. And actually, before I go on, I almost forgot, and this is new, and this just makes me so happy. And a lot of my customers, if you're a customer, you're going to be so happy. Approval. Notice how I customized my notification. We can now customize email notifications on approvals and acknowledgements now. Woohoo! I'm so happy. So the advisor approval, the email that went out to the approver used to be static, like you could not change it at all. If you need to give additional instructions to your approver, you can do this here. So if you want to customize your approval notification, you can add variables, you can add a specific subject line. I recommend keeping approval in the subject line so your approvers know what in the world that email is and what they're asked to do. So approval, so we could say, for example, student name, new major request. So Joseph Johnson, new major request. Approval, Joseph Johnson, new major request. I can give specific instructions if I want. So we'll just say thanks. And then we're going to go ahead and just save that step. So I do want to mention that you can do that. Can you include attached files? This is John's question. Can you include attached files into the email body? A student submits a confirmation document. You want that to be emailed to someone that doesn't have access to the build form. I'm trying to remember. Can we add, Casey, or if Tad is here, can we add files? I think you can.
I cannot do that right now.
I was just gonna say.
You can attach a PDF of the form, but you can't attach a document that was uploaded to the form.
Okay, so you can attach a PDF of the form, but you cannot attach a document that was uploaded. Thank you, Kip. I'm glad I didn't know you were here, so thank you.
That's a good suggestion, though. I like it.
It's a really good suggestion. So, okay. Oh, denials. Okay, notice how on this particular workflow right now, if the advisor denies the form, nothing is going to happen and the workflow stops. Meaning, literally it stops, it's not going to progress, and no one's going to be notified. No student, nothing. Let's say I want them to at least be notified. When I come in here, you can see what happens if it gets denied. This is where I want to add in custom steps. So if the form gets denied, I want something to happen, and then I want the workflow to stop. I don't want it to progress forward. I'll show you that in just a second. So I'm going to save this. Now I can drag in an additional step and maybe do a notification step to let them know their form is denied. In my case, I want to show you how you can actually copy and paste workflow steps, okay? If you click on a step and do Command C or Control C, so notice step is copied, and then Command C or Control V, it automatically makes a copy of that step. Now, you kind of have to click on the step twice to copy it, because notice when you click on the step once, it automatically highlights the step label. So you're going to kind of copy the step label if you don't click on it twice. Click on it twice, Command C, and Command V. Then I can take this step and drag it into my denial box, and then I can just change a few words. Your thing is denied. Your request is denied. Your request is denied. Easy. I'd make it a little bit nicer, but just go with me on that one, okay? So now it's saying form is submitted, goes to advisor. If the advisor denies it, then I submitted, or this notification will get sent to my submitter saying your request is denied, and then the workflow is going to stop, okay? That is exactly what I want in this scenario. Now, I want to show you one other option. Notice that I don't have to stop the workflow. I can also continue the workflow. So if I'm under my denial box here, I can save it. Now notice, advisor gets the request, they deny it, then it says continue. That means this notification will be sent out to the user, and then it will automatically send out this approval notification because the workflow continues. Obviously, that's not what I want in this scenario. I want my workflow to stop when it's denied. But you may have an instance where, like, the next approver down the line might be able to override the first approver. And if that's the case, then you want that continue option. I don't, so I'm just going to do stop the workflow and save. Okay, so here we go. We've got our basic approval workflow here. Next thing, let's say remember my question on my form that says, how many times have you requested a new major? First time, 2 or 3, blah, blah, blah. Let's say I want a different workflow based on what they answer in that question, okay? Let's say if this is their first time going through a new major request, I have one workflow, but if they've said 2 or 3 or 4 or more, something, I want a different workflow. This is where the branch comes into play. So I'm going to grab this branch step and I'm going to put it here at the beginning. And this opens up the branch box. Now, notice that we'll call this branch for now. Keep it pretty basic for today. Notice that the first box that comes up is the default route. The default route is wherever like I want most of my forms to go. If I have a separate route, like let's say I want my forms, if it's their first time requesting a new major, I want them to go with a different route. And I can also add multiple routes. I can have 3, 4, 5, or if you're UMass, you can have like 55. And I say that because I love Brad Cohen, but he has made some pretty crazy workflows. So you'll want to come to the research session later this week to see that. But route here when all of the following are true. So let's say, is this, how many times have you requested a new major? If their answer is first time, we're going to save it. That's where I want them to go. If they have requested a new major first time, all I want is to send an acknowledgement to the new department chair. So new department that they put on the form, I just want to send an acknowledgement to them. Person in a role of a group or group's hierarchy on the form, I'm going to say new department, and I want it to go to their department chair and save. For everything else, meaning if they've said they've requested a new major 2 or 3 times or 4 or more times, I want their advisor to approve it. So instead of this advisor approval hanging out here, I'm actually going to pull this into the default route. And then whatever happens, the user will get an approval notification at the end. So let's walk through these scenarios really quickly. This is a very basic workflow, but hopefully you get the idea. New major form is submitted. And the user says, this is my first time submitting a new major request form. It's automatically going to send an acknowledgement to the department chair of the new department they put on the form. So if they said my new major is going to be Spanish, it's going to send an acknowledgement to the Spanish department chair. Now, the acknowledgement doesn't stop the workflow. So the second that acknowledgement gets sent, the user is going to immediately get an approval notification saying your request to change to the Spanish major has been approved. Okay. Now, if they've selected 2 or 3 or 4 or more requests, then we're going to go through to this default route. And it's going to say, okay, their advisor has to approve. If denied, they're going to get a notification. But if their advisor approves, then they're going to get an approval notification here. Now, if I want to add the department chair step, again, the acknowledgement to this branch, I can do that. Just a reminder, Command C or Control C, Command V or Control C, and I can just bring it right up there. And so notice if they have requested a major change to more than 2 times, they have an extra step, but everyone at the end will come back there and get an approval notification saying their notification has been approved. Okay, I went through that really fast. This is seriously a crash course. Questions on workflow so far? John, sorry to be the guy of many questions. You're fine. Oh, and I missed Michael. I'm going to go back to Michael. Do you have an option to return to the previous step for more edits instead of deny? Yes, you do. I will show you that here in just a second. So yes, a user, an approver can send back to a previous approval if you want, or to the beginning of the step, or the beginning of the process to the form submitter. So yes, I'll show you that. John, sorry to be the guy with so many questions. Can you have the workflow break the form into multiple sections? Like student fills out the first part, then the office use, and the back student, and this. No, I'm glad you showed me that, or I'm glad you brought that up. This is actually one of my favorite parts of workflow. This is also a new feature. So in the advisor approval, if I scroll down, there is an option to make individual form sections at this step hidden or editable. If I check that, and you'll remember I have 2 sections in my form, I can allow the approver on this step to edit, or I can hide a certain section from them. Or I can just allow them to view this section. So is that what you're asking? I want to make sure I get the right answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's virtually it. I was just wondering if, like, thinking about like a workflow of somebody's requesting something, they fill out their part, it goes to somebody, they approve it, then they have to say it's a approval for access to, do something.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they fill out their request, the approver says, yes, I approve this. It goes to, from there, maybe they add a few bits of information like, hey, so-and-so, please make sure you give this person this access. This is what this group is called, blah, blah, blah. Then it goes to another person who's the final, makes the changes, kind of like a workflow for something like providing access to a set of files or, a new role or something like that.
Yeah. So what I would do in that case is make a bunch of office use only sections and then allow edit or hide privileges on each of those steps as needed.
Okay. No, that's awesome.
Great question. Leanne, how do you build multiple notifications acknowledgements in a step? For example, have a new department chair and advisor acknowledge before the submitter is notified. So you could just add in, Leanne, an extra acknowledgement step. So let's say here, I'm going to do that Command C, Command V again. And we'll bring this one down here. Whoops, I'm going to bring it down here. And then instead, I'm just going to change this to advisor. Is this what you're asking for? Change this to a specific person, advisor on the form. Is this what you're looking for? Leanne?
Sorry, so this is Leanne. So is it going to be all linear that way and it won't be vertical? So if you want the notifications or those acknowledgements to go all at the same time, like say this is a course designation approval process. And once it's been approved, so many different offices or people need to be notified that it has been approved before it goes back to, say, the submitter or the approval committee to say the process is complete and final.
Sure. So you're talking about people approving at the same time, parallel approval.
Or just notified, because the approval would happen. So in the process I'm designing, there's an approval that happens. Once it's approved, say the records office, the financial aid office, the counseling division, and our course scheduler all need to be notified that the approval has happened so that they can make necessary changes that need to be done.
Okay.
And then the committee who originally did the approval wants to be notified that the process is complete, meaning everybody's been notified. So in my head, it's almost like a branch where it's the vice chancellor, whoever approves the process or approves the form finally, and then 4 different people are notified or given acknowledgement. And then one person is notified at the end saying the whole process is complete.
Yes. So you could do an extra branch. So if I add a route here and I select always for this one, like this route always runs, and we'll just say, we'll save that. Then basically, we'll move this down here. This one is always going to run at the same time as this other step or this other step, depending on where it goes. So there's that option.
So if I use always, it'll run in tandem with the default.
You got it. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yep, exactly right. Yep. Awesome questions, you guys. I'm going to keep going. Keep putting your questions in the chat. I'll try and circle back here at the end. There's a couple more things I want to show you. And I'll also stay after for a few minutes as well if you want to get some more information. Also, by the way, I want to put in a plug tomorrow for the design lab. It's like an open office hour session. I will be there. If you have additional questions or want to get help on forms or more technical stuff, we'll have an engineer, a designer, and me, a couple engineers actually. So jump into that as well. Okay, so we've got our workflow. Notice up here, design test. I love this. I just can't tell Kip enough how great he has done with workflow. Kip has been the mastermind of workflow. He's amazing. When you switch over to test here, this opens up our workflow simulator. This allows you to test the entire workflow without ever bugging anybody on the workflow. So if you've got a dean that's set to approve something, you won't send them an email. You're going to simulate the whole process here before you ever publish this app. Run the test. It will ask you to only fill out the fields for the test that affect the workflow. So like, for example, here, I'm just, oh, let's not do that one. Anthropology is my bad example. First time. So when I select first time, it's going to take me through this route 1. And then when I submit it, it says, okay, there's parallel routes, just FYI, you're probably going to have to test this multiple times. And then it will take me, notice over here on the left, it's showing me which step I'm on. Okay, this is the email that's being sent to Leila Mueller saying, hey, you need to acknowledge this step. Notice how she can click begin review here, or I can just select next to move on to the next part of the process. This is now simulating Leila Mueller reviewing this form. Awesome. I can now acknowledge as Leila Mueller. And now it says this route is complete. Next takes me to that parallel route that Leanne was asking about. Now, again, this runs in tandem, so you can't really simulate two things showing it there, going at the same time. But I assure you, the new department acknowledge and the advisor acknowledge would have gone at the same time, but it's just allowing you to test and make sure that everything is correct, which it is. Wilford Benz can acknowledge, and then it says the route is complete. And now it's going to pop me over to this new notification. And now I can see your request is approved. Hey, Nancy Jones, remember how we put in the user's name? Your request to change to the biology department is approved. Next, workflow is completed. Awesome. Now, I can also view the status of those approvals. I'm going to come back to this later. So when I say status log later, I'll show you what this is. In just a little bit, okay? I can start over and test that other branch. So Workflow Simulator, if you haven't used it, it's amazing, okay? All right, there's workflow. I want to show you documents. I want to show you what's available. So I'm going to jump out of this particular app to get into an app that I actually have some test data in. So I'm going to jump in, same type of app, program change request, a student requesting a new major. And now I'm in my app. Notice when I jump in, I've got basic columns that are here, and all of the documents that have been submitted are listed. I can change my default columns by going to data settings here, and I'm going to show you how to do that over here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. You can search based on keyword that allow you to search the documents. I'm going to skip those for just a second and show you how to edit my columns. Let's say that I want to see my student advisor. A few other things I love, and I'm going to show you workflow.
Advisor was already turned on and you just turned it off.
What did I do?
It was already turned on and you just.
Oh, did I turn it off? Oh, whoops. Ha! Okay, I'll go back and turn it on. Workflow status, time on current step. Kip, you are keeping me honest here. Turn my advisor back on. Okay, there you go. Notice how when I clicked on the eyeball, if there's a little X through it, it'll remove it. No X, it stays there. So, all right, I've added a few extra columns that you can see what I'm talking about. The number is the document number. It's a identifiable number for that particular document. When it was submitted, submitter, the advisor, workflow total runtime. How long has the document been in progress? And I'm actually going to, if I click on submitted at, I'm going to change the dates. I want it submitted with the most recent submissions at the top. There we go. Workflow total runtime, how long it took for that whole document to go through the whole process. You can see this took 3 months. This one down here took 4 minutes. Workflow status, this tells me where my document is at in process. If I click on this and also other, there's a few others that you can filter out by, I can show simply like, I just want to see the in progress documents, for example. It's just going to show me the documents that are in progress. And if my documents are in progress, time on current step will show me how long they've been on that step. So you can see this one's been on that step for 5 months, 6 months. I probably really need to get in and improve some documents, okay? So this is just a way for me to adjust my view. Now, if I have a view or a report, another way to say it, that I will look at every single day, I can come up here and save my filter and give it a name. So I can call this like my in progress documents, and it would save that filter. And then I can go back and see my saved searches and select those at any time and just, check on my documents. Okay. Now, if I have permissions, we talked about this in the last hour, if I have permissions to edit or delete documents, you'll see those over on the far right. If I want to view a document, I can just simply click anywhere on the row and it will take me into the document itself. and allow me to see what that person submitted. Okay, so there's all their answers. And I can also see the status. I can see who submitted the form, what step it's on, who it's waiting for, and what are the next steps that are coming down the pipeline. If I go back, I've got another example of this. I can also see, I think it's this error document. Yep, it is. If a user has put comments in, because when they approve or deny or send back, they can type in a comment. I would also see that here as well. So you can see I actually denied this form as I was testing it, and I added this test 11 comment. It would allow me to see those comments. Let's see. Before, I want to show you one other thing. Cameron, are the display columns and filters saved per user? Yes. If you want to share your view, so let's say I want everyone to see this view, a couple of recommendations. One would be to set a default view option. So when anybody comes in, they would see the same default view. Now they could change that and save their own views. That's fine. But if I want to share my specific view with them, if I come up to share, this link is specific to this view. If I change my columns or filters, it would give me another link. So I can copy and paste that, share it with someone if I want. Okay, so, oh, I jumped the gun too early. Status, this status page. Remember when we were on the workflow simulator and I said, hey, remind me to tell you about status? The workflow simulator will also simulate this status page. So you can see perhaps what a whole workflow would look like and its status page when you're using the workflow simulator. Okay. Last thing, I think it was Michael who was asking about this. If I go to my action list and I click on one of my assignments, so I'm approving. So just to kind of complete the loop here, I am the approver. This will bring me into a form. You'll notice I'll be able to review the form. I will be able to approve the form, send back, or deny it. If I want to send it back, I can send it back to form submission, or if there are steps previous to me, I can send it back to a previous step too. So let's say I'm approver 3, I would see 2 other approvers here that I could send the form back to, and I could say, hey, you forgot to look at this. Approver number 1, you might want to look at that. So I could put those comments here as well. Michael, did that answer your question that you had earlier? I don't know if I got that, but I wanted to make sure I answered your question. Oh, yes, thanks. Okay, perfect. Whew, you guys have been through 2 hours of a marathon with me. What final questions do you have? And I know we're almost at the top of the hour, so if you have to take off, that's totally fine. I'll be here for a few minutes to answer questions. But also plug for the design lab tomorrow. If you have more questions, come on in. I'm also teaching this session 2 other times this week. So, or 1 other time this week. I'm teaching 2 more crash course sessions, part 1 and part 2, if you want to jump back in. Thank you for coming.